strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you. This show was created for family caregivers, for people taking care of someone or someones that cannot take care of themselves, especially people that are suffering with memory loss. We are actually live today out of Boca Raton, Florida. And if you want to let your friends and family, colleagues, other people know about us, they can actually listen to us anywhere on the iHeartRadio app under WNN 1470. Or if you're viewing us live stream on your smartphone or your computer, the website is www.caregiversolutions.info. We have a lot to talk about today, and one of the most important things that caregivers need to know in order to make their quality of life better and the quality of life of the person they're caring for, down the road, there may come a time when home isn't the right place anymore, and home is not actually meeting the needs of the person with memory loss. Whether it be Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, anything related to dementia and memory loss, it is progressive. Most of the time, you don't know, sometimes how fast it's going to go and when things are going to change, and you always want to be prepared. But sometimes it's a crisis situation where the caregiver can be overwhelmed by too much stress of the day and day in and day out, the 24/7, or as some people like to say, the 36-hour day of caring for someone, that you have to be so vigilant and you have to be on top of things. It does cause a lot of stress. And sometimes when caregivers have this stress, they actually go down before their loved one and end up in the hospital or worse. So it's very important to be prepared. On this show, we have experts in all kinds of fields sharing their advice and their expert opinion on all kinds of different topics, from elder law to social services to medical issues. And so we always urge caregivers, don't wait for a crisis to happen, and be prepared. So today's show, we're going to help you be prepared just in the event that you need to look for a memory care community for your loved one. And as I said, sometimes it's necessary because home isn't enough for lots of different reasons, and we'll talk about that today. So I have two wonderful guests with me, and I'd like to introduce them to you right now. I have with me right here in the studio, I have Kate Beloga. She's the marketing director of the West Palm Beach Arden Courts Memory Care Community. And joining her is Greg Kaminsky, and he is the marketing director of the Delray Beach Arden Courts Memory Care Community right here in South Florida. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, thank you.
Hi,
welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Wonderful that you're here. We have a lot to talk about today. You both are experts in memory care assisted living. And we want to let everybody know we are going to talk about memory care assisted living, not nursing home memory care, right? And not regular assisted living. I think it's really important because to distinguish that, there are still a lot of questions, a lot of confusion sometimes when we talk to caregivers. What's the difference, right? So we're going to be talking about someone who's home that maybe doesn't need a nursing home, but they need more, right? So they're not going to go into a nursing home because they're maybe not frail, they're not that sick, but they do have memory problems. And we're also going to be talking about maybe someone who lives at home, coming from home or coming from a regular assisted living. And a lot of people do start that way. They go into a regular assisted living, as you know, and then they progress because they get some memory problems, and it's necessary that they move on to the next step. So we're going to be talking about memory care, but in an assisted living environment, right? And that's what we want to make clear to everybody what we're talking about. And obviously, caregivers want the best for their loved one, and they need to prepare. So
Of course.
they're not
Of
waiting for a
course.
crisis. And everybody wants the same thing, I'm sure, for their loved one. They want their loved one to be safe,
Absolutely.
happy, and healthy.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So we're going to touch on all those topics for you today, and I'm so excited because this is great. We have two of you to give your opinions, and we're going to start, first of all, with this question I'm going to throw out to you. Aren't all memory care assisted livings the same?
No, not necessarily. Absolutely. When you look at a memory care for an assisted living, they're all different, and they tailor to different types of residents. And it's important to look at them specifically off of your loved ones, like needs and wants. Basically, more important needs. Of course, we all have wants, but it's just important to really tailor it towards your loved one.
Great. So I like that because you want to, sounds like what you're saying. In other words, you want to put the person or have the person go into an environment that's more tailored to what they need, not necessarily what the family wants or what the family thinks they need, but what the actual resident needs. So that, number one, very good point.
Right. And I think experience is very, very important when choosing a memory care community for your loved one. I know people see them popping up all over the streets. It's pretty saturated, a pretty saturated market, but that doesn't necessarily mean because it's a new community that it's a better community. I think experience really sets the tone for what you're giving your loved one.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that in depth when we get to that part, because that is so important. There's so much to talk about, and it is overwhelming sometimes for caregivers to kind of, where do I start?
Yeah.
So what's wrong with, speaking of what you just said, good segue, Kate, they're popping up all over the place. So I'm a daughter, and there's a new memory care literally down the street from me, and my mom has Alzheimer's. So, okay, I'll put her there because it's 5 minutes away. Is that a good decision? Is that doing due diligence? Is that going to be the right thing?
No.
No, you really have to do your research when choosing a memory care community. And I compare it kind of to a new restaurant. When a new restaurant opens, you need to work out the kinks and you need to get it all worked out. You don't want to put your loved one in a memory care community that's just open because people haven't had time to acclimate. They haven't had the training that's necessary. There's just so many factors to think about and so many things to balance when you're looking at a community.
But it's only 5 minutes away. It'd be so easy. It's so convenient to just, I could almost walk there. So why isn't that the best place for my mom? Because I could be there every day.
I would research every memory care community until I found the one that best suits my loved one's needs. Not what's convenient for me, but what is in the best interest of my loved one.
Absolutely.
So that being said, how many communities should I look at? before I make a decision?
I think
That's a tough one, too.
it is a tough one. I think that when you walk into a community and you're going through and, of course, taking a tour, and it's important to look at the residents and also make sure that they're well kept.
But
and
how many of those should I go to? How many? I mean, I could probably count probably at least a dozen in my surrounding area. Do I need to go to all of them?
I think that you should do your due diligence, but you'll know when you walk into a community, again, kind of looking at things and looking at the staff, you'll have a right feeling. And I think that when you have that, you'll know it's kind of your gut feeling. But again, it's all tailored towards your loved one's needs, and you have to do what's best for them.
So obviously here I'm playing devil's advocate with you all.
I would keep it to under 5. I would say 5
And,
or
wh-
less.
and why,
That's about
and
average, I
why
guess.
is that, Kay? Why would you limit it?
Because you're sometimes too much information is information overload, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice by going to so many. You're never going to make you have to jump in. You just have to do it. You have to have a plan, but you have to do it.
So too much information might cause somebody to get confused
Yeah.
of which community they saw something at versus another one. And
Correct.
that would entail a lot of notes, some graphs, some charts.
And time.
And time.
that you're
Yeah.
wasting going to all these communities when you really should be putting that plan in place.
Okay.
Because you never know when that crisis is going to hit.
So what's a good way to start? Because if I'm only going to pick 5 out of a dozen that maybe I could, how would I first narrow down without going to any of them first as a family member? How should I even begin to narrow it down? Any suggestions about that?
I think again, you can obviously do your research, and I think that
Like go online
yeah, you could do that
and look at what?
Look at the reviews.
the reviews
Definitely
are
look
very
at the
important.
reviews.
Reviews?
Look at the Google reviews. Look at what previous and current family members are saying about the
Yes.
community that their loved one is in. And that's another thing that you're not going to find with a newer community. There aren't going to be those reviews. So that you're going to have a harder time finding out whether or not that's a place that your loved one should be.
Okay, so I can go online, I can look at reviews. That's a great idea. What about kind of ratings? Can I find ratings online about some of these communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can obviously you can look at all the records online, and through ACA, you can also see the reviews of the state surveys that happen every 2 years.
And that'll tell me a lot.
It does. It tells you what the facility and how it's functioning, basically their health and safety, and that's how they're regulated. So it's through the
Right.
state. It's very important.
And if there are any deficiencies, it'll show that as well. So you're going to want to look for a community with very low or zero deficiencies.
Okay, and that's through ACA, which is Agency for Healthcare Administration, in case you want to know. And go online, and they do rate everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they do their surveys for assisted living in the state of Florida once every 2 years. So you can get a lot of great information that way. And what about asking certain people what they would recommend? Who should I ask?
I think it's important that, if you have any family or friends that have had a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's, or, what they've did and how they did their research, and if they have any recommendations, that's very important. I also think, too, that local support groups are very important. That's a good resource to the community.
Good idea.
You can also, I think it's important, going to those support groups and just asking their recommendations and see if they have any experience with searching, and go from there.
And I think Alzheimer's community cares and associations like that also have recommendations for you, and that's a good starting point.
Well, they know because they talk to all these caregivers and they get
All the
all
time.
this information and feedback. So your local Alzheimer's Association, here we have Alzheimer's Community Care, like you mentioned, any of those types of organizations, whatever community you happen to be in, there's probably one that you can tap into. Great. Why is it important to ask a family or someone who has firsthand experience. Why would that be important?
I was just going to say, because they have firsthand experience.
I agree.
They have firsthand experience, and they can really guide you and give you recommendations. There's not a person out there that hasn't been touched by Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. There really hasn't. So there's going to be somebody out there that knows something. And I think there's some great resources out there. There's some great support groups out there, as well as some great communities.
Great. So I've narrowed down my search from a dozen to maybe a handful, right? Because I've got recommendations, I've asked around, I checked the computer, I've looked up ratings, and now I'm ready to go. So you mentioned, Greg, a few minutes ago that you should take a tour.
Absolutely.
So you want to set up an appointment to take a tour, right?
Yeah, you would call all of your communities that you're going to research and take a tour and schedule that. And there's key things to, again, look at while you're touring.
Great.
So.
And we're going to talk about those key things in just a moment. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more information from Kate and Greg about how to choose a memory care community. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. We are Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and my special guests today are Kate Beloga from Arden Courts Memory Care Community of West Palm Beach and Greg Kaminsky, Marketing Director of Arden Courts Memory Care Community of Delray Beach. And we are talking about how to choose a memory care community for a loved one. We want to be prepared. We want to be proactive. So we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty about that now. We've made our appointments, and we're going on a tour. And so let's talk about first what we're going to see and talk about the environment. Talk about the actual physical place. And we want to keep in mind this is for memory care. So what are some of the things in a physical environment that we should be looking for?
Okay, I think it's really important to make sure that there's a lot of walking space, and that it's on a first floor. It can't be on a second level or a third level.
Why not?
Because, people with Alzheimer's have a difficult time in not walking. Straight paths and things like that are better suited for people with memory care. And you don't want them falling down a flight of stairs or getting into an elevator. They get confused, they get lost. So you need them on one level, preferably with a lot of room for walking to get some of their agitation out.
So walking can help with agitation.
Exactly.
In a lot of cases.
It helps with the stimulation and getting people stimulated and getting some of the agitation out.
What's wrong with a second floor besides maybe safety with an elevator or stairs? Are there any other concerns if you were living in a second or third floor in a memory care community, Greg?
Yeah, I think it's really important. With being on a first floor, you have the opportunity to walk right outside and into a courtyard, something that's, again, secure and safe. But If you're on a second or third floor, you're not going to get that. And I think that going outside and being able to walk and again burn off that energy, that I think that again it helps with programming and getting them involved. And so you do have less behaviors. But if you're on the second or third floor, I think that you're going to miss that whole aspect of exercising and the vitamin D
and the evacuation. If there were ever an emergency and you wanted to evacuate your residents, that's a time-consuming process. I know I've done it before at another assisted living community that had 3 levels, and to evacuate on different floors it's a safety risk in itself.
That could be very dangerous, because if you have people that are not on the first floor and you have an emergency, whether it be, a hurricane coming or whether it's a fire or whatever it might be, how do you get those people, especially if they're in wheelchairs or if they're not able to help themselves, and get them down in a timely fashion? That would be very chaotic, I would think.
Yeah, it's definitely could be a safety risk because again, dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, these residents need direction. They may get scared or confused, especially when an alarm goes off. That's loud and it's scary, especially if they don't know their environment. So you can be confused on where to go. So I think it's important that, you'd have to have the staff to be able to get them down safely. So logistically, I think a first floor is better.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, we've got a 1 floor. Everybody agrees that that's the best thing, right? So let's talk about how that 1 floor that is set up. Is it going to be conducive to a new person acclimating? Because, if they're coming from a regular assisted living, obviously there can be 3 or 4 or 5 stories. There's lots of elevators. There's lots of long hallways.
Yeah.
And there's also signs, right? Like, this is the way you go to the cafeteria, or this is the way you go to the health center, or whatever it might be. But in a memory care, a lot of people don't comprehend those signs. They can maybe read, but they sometimes don't understand what they mean, right?
Correct.
Right.
So how is a new person, a new resident with memory loss coming into a new environment, how are they going to best acclimate? What would be some of the things that a family caregiver should look for when they're choosing for this reason?
I think a good environment, a good setup is something that has some color, and they know that the color is where they go. Things need to be separated according to, maybe there's a core layout, and then trying to explain
Less confusing
less
for them.
confusing,
Yeah, structured.
but structured, but in a less confusing environment. And then they need to be able to set it up in a way that they're able to get to the kitchen, to the dining room, to the living room, where they know where everything is. So that would be something that I could see in a long type of hallway. But everything to be spaced out, but in a less confusing way. I don't know.
Well, maybe also in a less, maybe, I don't want to say commercial way, but in a way that looks like home, right? Because they want to feel comfortable and not feel like they're in an institution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's important that the design is, cohesive to, their environment on stimulus and not being too loud, areas to walk and be able to not having just some communities are, assisted living and memory care, and some of them are units. So that's important to look at. Logistically, the rooms are smaller. I think that helps it be more structured. Large, big, grand dining rooms can create confusion and also anxiety because they don't know where to go, and it's such a large area. Same thing with bedrooms being structured and the bathrooms being safe. All of that's important when you're looking.
Right. Okay. Good to know. So I have a lot of questions to ask about environment. And when you just mentioned, Greg, safety, right? So how important is safety? Because, here's somebody that's new to a new environment. They have dementia. They don't know where to go. They don't know, how to get there. And how are we going to keep someone safe in a new community? So, first floor, yes, we have that. You mentioned, Kate, about colors and things to kind of cue them, right? And so, is it important for them to feel that they know where to go, or how do you make them feel comfortable if they don't know where to go? And how do you make sure that a person is not only safe, but they don't miss out on activities or meals or something like that? How would you describe a great environment like that to someone looking?
I would say staff is one of the number one factors in determining whether or not your loved one is going to activities and is finding their room and is finding the restroom and is, making their way to the kitchen and dining room for meal times. Longevity of staff and staff that they're familiar with is important as well. So I would say definitely staff, and a great programs director too, to get you to activities.
Yeah.
But just the knowledge and the experience of staff members, and that it's that routine, it's that constant. Come on, Miss Jones, let's go back to your room. They'll get it after a while. After a while, they'll know that that's their room. It's in that hallway. It's, those are my pictures. That's the caregiver that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so you're talking about, like you just mentioned, pictures, cueing, things that kind of look familiar to them and help them to know where they're at. For instance, if it's a beauty shop, maybe it has a barber pole, or maybe it has little scissors, a picture with cutting hair, something like that. Things for cueing for people with memory loss is very, very helpful. And you mentioned something that I want to touch on, Kate, with the staff. When it comes to safety, the staff is very important because they have to be obviously aware and they have to be checking on the residents. There are a lot of places that use technology, right, to check on their residents, because we're in the age of technology. Everybody wants the latest and greatest thing, and so they've got cameras and they've got beepers and they have all of these things to check on the residents. So is that a good thing? Have we entered that age of technology where we can let technology dictate the safety of residents? What do you think?
I think that the technology is out there for different reasons, and I think it's more important to be more hands-on when you're looking at the staff. Having a bed alarm, that's a loud alarm. It could scare somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's. And having cameras is one thing to see what the resident's doing, but if you're not there, you're not checking on them, they can fall in an instant, and they can fall at any time. But frequent checks and hands-on care is important, I think, more than technology is.
Right, and somebody with a memory impairment is not going to know to hit an alarm or to hit a button, or when they need assistance. So that can be more of a hindrance than a help.
So if I'm the daughter taking the tour and they say, oh, this is the pull cord in the bathroom that your mom can pull, or here's a button she can push if she needs help. And you're saying that's not a good thing because she might forget to use it. Or on the other hand, what if the resident uses it all the time, and then what
Right.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes, oh, she does that all the time. And what if that one time she really does
Correct.
need the help? So it's almost like the boy who cried wolf, right?
Right.
Because it happens and everybody's ignoring that bell when it's most needed at that particular time. So I like what you said, Greg, hands-on. You want to have
Eyes on.
eyes on, right, Kate? You want to have that personal touch.
Correct.
And I think, too, if you do have that and you do it often enough, then you may avoid some of these problems that could happen instead of being reactionary.
Yeah, it's good to be proactive.
Be
Be
proactive.
proactive with, frequent checks and, eyes on the residents and people rounding, having nurses. And that's another thing you need to look at too is, the staff. Are they 24/7? Is there nurses 24/7? There's different things that are play in the safety and security of the residents.
Absolutely, absolutely. So safety is very important, and this is great conversation, but we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to give you the free offer for a free caregiving book. So stay tuned so you can get that information. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CaregiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader in memory care, and as such, they want to be a resource for you, the family caregiver, even before you need to have help in an assisted living for memory care, meaning that they offer support groups, they offer seminars, and today, because you are tuning in to the program, they're offering this book. It's called the 36-Hour Day Book. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. I highly recommend it. They call it the Bible for Caregivers, with lots of information and context that is going to really be helpful to you in your day-to-day caregiving challenges. This book is wonderful. You can read it front to back or pick and choose what might be appropriate to you to know at a particular time. So all you have to do to get this free book is call Arden Courts on their toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410, and give them your name and address, and they'll be sure to mail a copy of the 36-Hour Day book right to you. So again, that number is 888-478-2410. Give them a call today, and you'll be glad that you got this book. So my guests today are from Arden Courts Memory Care Community, speaking of, and I'm with Kate from the Arden Courts of West Palm Beach and Greg from Delray Beach Arden Courts. And thank you again for being here. We're talking today about how to choose, right? And your job is to educate caregivers so that they don't make a mistake, which we've seen many times, by picking a community, a memory care community, for the wrong reasons. And that's what we're talking today. You want to be prepared, you want to be educated, and we're talking about those kinds of things that are important to look at and important to check out about a memory care before you just pick one, right? So we've been talking about safety, we've been talking about the right type of environment, and we've touched a little bit about people. And I want to go there right now and talk about when you're taking the tour and you're observing the people that live there, the residents, right? You're going to come across residents. What are some of the things as a newbie, first time in this type of environment? You know, my dad has dementia, but I want to be ready, so I'm looking. And I've never done this before. And I see a lot of people milling around and in this particular community I might be looking at, because you told me I should look at, maybe 5. And so I'm comparing, right? I'm comparing
Right.
apples to apples.
Right.
So I see residents. What should I look at when I see those residents?
Are they well taken care of? Are they dressed properly? Is their hair combed? Are they shaved? Are they engaged in activities? Are they smiling? Are they happy? Are they walking around? Are they just slumped up in a wheelchair in the corner of the room? Where's the staff? Is the staff engaging with them? I think those are all really good things to be looking out for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that, looking, at the residents and how engaged they are and doing programs and different types of activities. And that's important too, is the type of programming and is the staff engaging them. Kate, you mentioned too before, is making sure that they actually get to activities and escorted down there. Because again, they need to be reminded. Short-term memory loss, they're not going to remember in 5 minutes. It's time to go down to, do some fun activities. So I think that's important. And I think looking at the residents, I mentioned before, they're well kept and just engaged.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something out at you that I'm sure you hear all the time. I bring, my dad to take a look because I want him to see, which maybe or maybe not, that's a good idea, which we can talk about that. But let's say I bring him to take a look. And he says, look at all those old people. I'm not like that. Now, my dad is, 89 years old. Look at all those old people. That's not me. What do you say to somebody when either they're an adult child or a spouse or even a potential resident, and that's what they say? How do you address that?
Well, I hear that a lot. I hear my dad or my mom, they're not at that stage yet, but they have good days and bad days. So you don't know when that bad day is going to hit. And we have all stages. There's all different stages of people with Alzheimer's, later stage, middle stage, and very low functioning. And it's important to be with similar type people that can engage you.
That you can identify
that you
with.
can, Right.
Yeah. So also the fact that if they see some people that are later stages, perhaps they're even on hospice and they're not active, obviously they've either been there a long time, which is good because the community's taking care of them, or they're getting ready to move to heaven or a nursing home perhaps. But regardless of that, I think it's important too to not make a judgment based upon a couple residents.
Exactly.
Because if it's a community and if it's big enough, which I want to get back to unit versus purpose-driven or purposely built, if it's big enough, you're not seeing everybody, right? So I think a lot of times caregivers make a judgment based upon a limited amount of information that they might see on a tour. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
agree. And especially if a tour is done on a weekend, a lot of family members come and take their loved ones out for the weekend. So you're not getting the full picture of what the community is like on a weekday basis, or even it could be during lunch and they're out to lunch with their family member and you're not seeing them in activities. You're not seeing them fully engaged because a lot of people, like I said, they take them out during the weekend. So, my recommendation would be to come at a time where the residents are fully engaged
Or to go back more than once.
Right,
even.
go back more
I
than
think
once.
multiple tours is a good idea.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
A retour is absolutely
Yeah.
what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that being said, Greg, you had mentioned before, some memory care communities are units, meaning they're attached to a regular assisted living.
Correct.
And some memory care communities are purposely built as a memory care, and they're what they call standalones, right? So what are the pros and cons between the two, and why is maybe one better than another?
I think that when you're looking at a community, it's important, is again, needs and wants. But when you have a community that has assisted living and a memory care, maybe even independent living on their campus, their focus isn't solely on memory care. the percentage of the population it's probably a smaller unit, and the assisted living is probably larger. So it's important too in making sure that the staff is trained to take care of the people in the memory care. I think a purpose-built building is my recommendation to look at, because again, their sole focus is 100% on memory care. All the staff is taking care of the same type of residents, and again, their training is important. But the purpose-built communities, I think, operate more logistically, have more open areas. It's not a small unit to say. And again, and just focusing in on memory care is important with your staff and experience. I think the experience makes a difference.
And also, it would be probably safe to say that a unit is going to be a smaller population of people
Correct.
than a purpose-built building or a standalone. And why would that be important for a family member or for a resident, the potential resident? Why is it important to that person to have more people around? Being that,
Well, I think that you have a range of residents. When you have a larger population, it can be kind of like a bell curve in memory care, and you have some higher functioning residents. You have residents who have advanced with their disease process and are maybe a little bit lower functioning. But when you have a larger population, again, you have a population of higher functioning mid-level residents and maybe some lower functioning residents. So it gives you the opportunity to have, similar functioning.
And to be able to engage with other people that are like you in the disease process.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Very good. Very good. So we're talking about the people that live there, and that was great, Kate, your observations, what a family should look for. What about the people that work there? We've already talked a little bit about training. Okay, if they work in a memory care, they have to be trained. They have to take some training classes. Maybe they're CNAs or HHAs, and most of them have to go through some type of Alzheimer's training. Is training enough?
I think that it's a combination of training and your experience that makes a difference. I mean, people, the more experience you have dealing with a patient or resident, everybody's different. So you might get different behaviors, from every resident, and one resident might have different types of behaviors. So when you've experienced that and you've worked with many different types of residents, you know kind of how to approach them, and you kind of sharpen your saw, if you will, and learning how to have the right approach and give the great care that somebody who has maybe 10 years experience or compared to somebody who's coming out of school. It takes some time to learn the craft.
Right, because you can be taught on the books, right? And about how to do anything, but unless you've actually done the job or put it into practice, I think what you learn and what you do are two different things, right?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
And I think ongoing training is important too. It can't just stop after 30 or 60 or 90 days. It has to be ongoing training.
So are these things that family members can find out if they're taking the tour? Can they ask these types of questions?
Yeah.
You can absolutely find out.
So they should.
Yeah,
They should ask.
I encourage them to. I think that's important. That's doing your due diligence.
Okay, good. And what else about staff? Do we need to know? First of all, we want to know how long they've worked there. That gives us that number, that experience, because obviously the longer someone has worked in this field or worked in this particular community, probably says a lot about their skills and their abilities. But what about their backgrounds? How important is it to go into a memory care community knowing that they've done their due diligence in hiring the right people, right? As opposed to, I know a lot of caregivers that are family caregivers would say, well, I'm just going to hire somebody because I know a friend of a friend who does this kind of thing, and they really don't know anything about them. So why is it important, better to go into a community? Because what do they do as far as making sure that the staff is the right person?
We do background checks. Every community has to do a background check on their employees. I think it's also important to know what your staffing ratios are and what your level of nursing is. And different communities have different licenses too. That's a whole nother topic. But they have different licenses, so you have to be well staffed for the type of license that you are. And I think it's important to know when people say 24-hour nursing available versus 24-hour nursing on site. I think those are two differentials that people need to be made aware of as well. So definitely check and make sure, that the nurses are not just available 24 hours a day, but they are on site 24 hours a day.
Greg, you're a nurse too, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is a great question for you because, as a nurse and a marketing director, you can obviously relate to the nursing part of this. But why is it important to have nurses not just available, like Kate said, because if they're available, they have to be probably called from home
Yeah.
to come into the community, and that could take a long time. So why is it important to have nurses, like Kate said, on site? Tell me about that.
So having nurses on site, I think it's the next level of, I guess you'd say, peace of mind and security that you have a licensed nurse on staff 24/7, that it's not just on staff, I should say on site. Because if somebody's available, like you said, they're by phone. If there's an emergency situation, it's nice to have a licensed nurse on staff who can handle that, who can do an assessment on the resident,
Kind
contact
of hard
the
to
doctor.
see if someone has a broken foot over the phone, right?
Correct, absolutely. I think it's important too if having the nurses and making sure that the nurses are passing the medications. That's one thing that I find in a lot of communities is that.
What, you mean they have other people passing medications sometimes?
Absolutely. There's med techs, if you will, medication technicians that go through a class.
I think it's a 4-hour class too, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, and it's different when you have a medication aid in assisted living, not a memory care, that the resident is alert and oriented. They know who they are. They know that that's their lisinopril. They're cognizant of that. In a memory care, you need to make sure that you have a licensed nurse because they don't know what they're taking. And again, there could be changes in meds, and you need to have the oversight of not somebody who, it's nothing against them, but the training of a nurse, it can be a year to 4 years, and even longer. And so the experienced nurses and somebody who's been passing meds and knows what to do, that makes a difference.
Yeah, because they can triage things, right? In other words, like you said, they can figure out, how maybe hurt someone is or isn't. And that leads me to the question of hospitalizations. And one of the things that is very detrimental to people in memory care is going to the hospital unnecessarily, right? And so what that means is if a nurse is on site, right, they can triage and maybe prevent that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. They can assess the patient. They can call the doctor if we need to do, an X-ray or some kind of labs. It can do it, usually on site, and those are other things that you need to look at too. That makes it a well-versed community that have those type of features. That's important, because
Right.
if you send them out to the hospital,
What happens?
it's a new environment. So new environments, it's they're confused. They're more confused, more agitated, could be combative.
They're scared.
Yeah, they're scared. They're really scared, and it's because they don't know their environment, and they don't. This is a new one, and they don't know the people. There's no structure.
Right.
And the hospital staff is not familiar with them, and they don't oftentimes understand Alzheimer's and dementia and what that entails. Safety is a big factor in the hospital, with somebody with Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
Yes.
making sure they don't wander. You're on a hospital floor. They could get up and walk out the room because there's the longer hallways, but they could just wander, and then it's very dangerous. So having somebody go to the hospital, you want to try to minimize that, and having a community that has those nurses on site, they can, like you said, triage that and try to help and keep them in their familiar environment, their structured environment, that it's important for them.
Right.
Right, wonderful. And let's go to programming before we run out of time today real quick. How important is programming, meaning activities, stimulating activities? How important is that in in the day in the life of a person with memory care? Kate, how?
I would say it's probably the most important thing. I just read an article the other day about when cognitive abilities decline. When your stimulation declines, so do your cognitive abilities. So they go hand in hand. If you're not stimulating the brain and really keeping active and engaged, your abilities are on the decline as well.
What do you want to add to that, Greg?
I agree. Absolutely. The programming is so important. And having maybe a larger community too, somebody that's well versed in memory care can have different types of programming or dual programming. That's important because, again, you're tailoring to different types of residents who are going through their disease process at their own time. So functioning levels are all different for everybody. So having a programming that can meet the needs of your loved one and where they're at with their disease process, that's key. It's very important.
Yeah, that's a good point, because not one size fits all when it comes to programming. Yes, everybody enjoys, the guitar player, and everybody likes a sing-along, but not everybody can, play the game, and not everybody can answer the questions and do what the whole group does. So how are you going to stimulate everybody and without anybody being excluded or feeling like they don't fit in?
Absolutely.
So it's called dual programming. So programming for different levels of residents' cognitive state of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. That's very, very important. And you're right, because, Kate, if they're not being engaged, if they're not stimulated, if they have nothing to do, what's the point? What's the point? Like you said, it's the most important thing because this is their life and you want to engage them. How important would be life skill activities? You have any people that have thrived because they've been able to get involved in life skill activities like laundry or something? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I had we've had multiple residents, but I can think of one lady that we cared for that really got into, she was a homemaker. She also was in real estate, but she was always, she was a mother of, I think, 6 kids. But anyways, she was really into the mom, and she wanted to take care of everybody. And she really got into too, where she would help out. She's high functioning and would try to help other residents, and she liked to fold towels. And that's why too, there's different levels of programming, maybe more hands-on that, you don't think it's important that a resident is folding towels, but that could be what they enjoy. It could take away a behavior. And I think in realizing and knowing your residents, that's, important to do that.
And it gives them a purpose.
Yeah,
purposeful, people
meaningful.
have to have a purpose. We had a resident who's since passed, and she was a nurse. And we even gave her a name tag and everything. So she walked around and she, was nurse all day long, and she helped. She literally helped everyone. So we called.
And how do you think that made her feel? What was the difference?
Important. Mm-hmm. People need to be made to feel important and to have a purpose.
I agree with that. We had a resident came in, and it was he was in the military, and he was a captain, and he likes to be called, I'll change his name, but Captain Jim. And that was important, so we put that on his nameplate because he goes by that, and it made him feel good, and because he was very proud of his time of service. And again, little things like that make the difference. So
would you say that knowing about the person that might be coming into a community would be of very great importance before they get there, so that
Absolutely.
You could give them this feeling of being important or engage them in particular activities,
yes,
right?
You have to be able to tailor a package around this person. And, getting to know, we have a getting to know you packet. And, I would definitely stress to people that are looking for communities, how well do they get to know your loved one before coming in? not when they get there, but even before they get there, and developing that package before they get there.
Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, individualized care. I think
Individual,
Yeah.
customized to
Yep.
that person.
And implement it with the family member. Get the family member involved in implementing that
Yeah.
care plan.
Yeah.
because they know their loved ones the best.
They
I
do.
think that's
Right.
what's-
They can share all of that.
Yep.
Speaking of sharing, I want to thank both of you for coming today. I'm so
Absolutely.
glad that you came down to share all of your expertise on memory care. And I have to tell everybody that both of these folks are available. If you have questions, they're going to give their number of their community where you can reach them. So, Greg, you want to give that information,
Yeah,
how to
absolutely.
reach you?
We're at Arden Courts in Delray Beach, and the phone number there is 561-498-5552.
All right. And Kate?
And I'm in West Palm Beach, the Arden Courts in West Palm Beach on Village, and the number is 561-688-9999. That's pretty easy. 561-688-9999.
So both of you are available for tours, to educate, to give caregivers information, and also supply more information about support groups and things like that.
Absolutely.
So I think it is really important for everybody to take note of what we've talked about today. It is so important. And I just have to say, the reason that you all know what's needed is because you work at Arden Courts. And of course, Arden Courts is specifically designed for memory care. They are our national sponsor because they have been a leader in the field of memory care for 25 years. And it's important for caregivers to learn everything that you can. And yes, there are going to be a lot of times when a person is not the right fit for a certain community. But in that case, you should be able to give a recommendation, or someone can recommend, what might be good. So I think you guys are awesome, and you do a great job, and you're very compassionate and very caring to not only your residents, your staff, and to the families that you come encounter with. So thank you again
you.
for
Thank you,
being
Marcia.
here.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. We have lots more for you every week, every Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check us out on iHeartRadio. Check us out on the website, caregiversolutions.info. Call for your free book, 888-478-2410 to get your free 36-hour day. Here it is. And in the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. So take care, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff,